It is a pleasure to have you here in my house. This is going to be a very interesting history lecture about Lima Underground. We're going to talk about, well, that Lima that most people don't know exist still these days here in my city. So we're going to talk about history. We're going to talk about also lots of interesting archaeological findings. So I really hope that you find this event very interesting. And also, if you have questions, please, you can use this chat for talking a little bit with me, for asking me about different things. Well, also, this is my house. I just moved here, so I'm also trying to adapt to my new location and also to, well, let's say, new internet signal and everything. So I hope everything works for you. Well, once again, if you don't know me, my name is Vanessa. I am a tour guide from Lima, Peru. I've been guiding for many years here in my city. Also, well, my specialty is history, and also I talk about different things like, for example, archaeology. I love to talk about archaeology. Also food, that's another of my interests. And well, many other things, bird watching and many other things also. So well, if you are ready to begin with this adventure, give me please a thumbs up. Also, let me know if this is the first time you're joining one of my events. And also, I would like to apologize because my camera, I don't know why, I cannot put it in landscape mode. It's always like this. Every time I want to connect YouTube from my camera, from my cell phone, in horizontal position, it says that I have to rotate it. So I'll try to do my very best to have, well, let's say to give you a nice image of what I want to show you in my computer. My computer is right in front of us, so I hope you have the chance of seeing everything. And well, here we have the chat also for chatting and talking, and also you can ask me as many questions as you wish. So well, okay, my dear friends, we are going to begin, and I'm going to also turn the camera to the other side. So before, I would like to say hi to the people joining. Hola, Catherine. Hola, Natalie. Hi, thanks for joining. It's been long, by the way. Hola, Marilyn. Hello, hello. So, well, thanks for joining, amiga. Muy bien. So, okay, so we're going to try to also minimize a little bit of the glare. So I'm going to turn off the light over here, and I think it's going to be working also. So we're going to talk about Lima Underground, and very important to mention that the city of Lima has a lot of passages, lots of, let's say, study sites. Let me just move a little bit the camera over here, so I think you're seeing one of the edges of my light. So I think it will be much better like this. Okay, I really adapted everything for the other position, for the horizontal position, but well, it didn't work this time, so we will work with what we have. So as I was saying, Lima City has lots of underground passages, and we are really not known as a city of, let's say, of catacombs like the cities of Rome and Paris, which, by the way, I recently discovered that Paris has over 250 kilometers of corridors underground, under the city, known as catacombs. And Rome has hundreds of kilometers, probably, of those catacombs. Well, Lima is not exactly like that in terms of, you know, like extent of catacombs, but our catacombs are very interesting because they are sometimes, let's say, cemeteries, underground cemeteries. Sometimes are escapeways also between convents and houses, on houses and convents. So that's also interesting. We're going to explore that also today, why people would want to, let's say, escape from their houses to a convent in those days, and why they will need to have those type of catacombs or passages. And also some of them are very strange, that we don't know why they existed, okay? But it is true that we had also underground corridors. We know this from chronicles. We know this from historic accounts. And probably we will never know exactly the truth about them, because the secrecy, the character of secrecy of those corridors, probably has doomed us to never understand the complete extent of them even. So this is a little sort of like a map of the center of the historic part of Lima, including the Palacio or government palace, for example, Casa Aliaga. So this is really the starting point of the city of Lima. And the main square, Plaza de Armas, is located in this section over here, right? So for those that have been here in person in Lima, and you've probably seen the catacombs of, for example, St. Francis, which are over here. And here we have a train station nowadays, right? So just to give you an idea where probably you've been if you came here in person. So, well, we can see also in the distance Rimac River. This is a very important river for Lima. It is not just that the name Lima, the name of the city, is related with the name of the river, Rimac. Is sort of like a mispronunciation or a sort of like a change, maybe a deformation of the name of the river, Rimac, Limac, Lima. But also Rimac is the giver of life to this valley, okay? So, let's really begin with a little bit of information and introduction to this topic. And I think there's a little glare here, so let me close the window behind us so you can have a better idea. Remember that I just moved here, so I'm just adapting to this new space, which I'm very happy to be here. But I'm just trying to adapt to this. Oh, there's a little bit of light behind, so let me just close everything. Okay, so please let me know if you're able to see everything and read everything. So how is also the connection? Everything okay, amigos? It is, by the way, very sunny here. We're in summer, so it's very, very sunny. The chat is a little bit silent, so I hope it is not because you are not seeing anything or you're not hearing me. So please help me with that, okay? Oh, very good. Okay, thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Alexander. So, well, now we can read a little bit of the information we have here. So basically summarizing what the information says is that Lima is not just, oh, thank you, Marilyn, thank you. It's not just a city of convents, a city of colonial houses, of beautiful colonial balconies also, which in other occasions I talk about them, but also is a city of cemeteries and is a city of catacombs. Many secret passages underground exist in the city. But, well, the reason of these catacombs could be many. For example, we had in the colonial times attacks of pirates. We had pirates coming to Peru, even to Lima, to the port of Callao during the colonial era. We had some attacks of them. So probably people were afraid of being attacked by pirates because Lima has the particularity of being the only capital in South America that is located next to the ocean, right? So we needed to be protected if we had any, let's say, any pirates coming to this territory, any privateers coming to this territory. Because Lima was a very rich city. So there were people who were having a lot of gold and silver in their homes. There were no banks in that time, so everybody had their valuables, their money, right, in their houses. So the best way to protect those goods was making those holes in the house in secret sections, so you could also save your money. That's why we have also a lot of stories of treasures in Lima. But not just in Lima, also in many cities around the world, there are stories of treasures in palaces, for example, or in castles. So the same happened here in the city. So this is an image of the historic center of Lima back in the colonial times. To be more precise, we're talking about the, let's say, mid 18th century, the 1700s, in which we can see, for example, that Lima used to be walled. So this is my city. You can see there are walls here around the whole city, right? So these are walls, these are bastions attached to walls. And we can see that, well, evidently there's one section outside the walls and one section inside the walls. And dividing these two sections, we have the river, okay? So the section where the tunnels, the catacombs that we will be talking about are located is inside the walled city. Okay. Hi, Arlene. Thanks for joining. Welcome, welcome. So, also we can notice that we have over here the main square of Lima. That is the main square, Plaza Mayor, Plaza de Armas also. Okay. So the section we will be referring about during this event is basically this part over here. Right, we're going to be in this section. Are there any, let's say, other catacombs or tunnels beyond that section I am talking about? Probably yes, but we had a lot of damage in the historic center in the recent times, which had also destroyed completely the foundations of the colonial houses, because we have placed like modern buildings on top, and well, now they are really not leftovers of many of the corridors they used to cross the city underground. So we are talking about a city under the city in a way, right? So there are sections that are gone completely, so we will never be able to see the full extent of those passages. This is how the wall Lima, the colonial wall Lima, is located in comparison to the modern Lima, right? So this is where the walls, for example, would be if they still existed. They are no longer existing, by the way. We don't have walls in most of Lima. There is, very little remains of the original walls of the city, which are in two locations, to be very precise, right? Very close to the river up here, there's one small section existing, and in one of the edges of Lima, which is also one of the zones that was the latest that developed, okay? So we're going now to talk about these remains, and I'm going to push back a little bit this camera. So we will talk first about the Church of Santa Ana de los Indios, Saint Anne of the Indigenous. And also, well, let's really talk about the differentiations between the castas or castes in the colonial times. So Lima was a city that was very, very sectorized. Back in the colonial times, in the 16th, 17th century, there were zones that were exclusively for indigenous, there were zones that were for Spanish, there were zones for Afro-descendants. Of course, now, over 400 years after, those zones don't exist anymore. We don't have ghettos for indigenous or ghettos for Afro-Peruvians. That is nothing like our reality. No, we are very mixed, but 400 years ago, basically, we still had a lot of separations. And the separations were not just in the surface of Lima, they were also underground Lima. And so we can see here the Church of St. Anne of the Indigenous. This church is very, very old. It's one of the first churches we had in Lima, and it was dedicated to the indigenous. So now you can see how the city is, and how the temple remains also this red section you see there, this red structure you see in this section is the Church of St. Anne. So the modernity has swallowed completely all of the colonial infrastructure of Lima, all the colonial heritage. And that's also why I say that most of the catacombs that we used to have in Lima are completely gone. Because to be able to build, for example, this type of architecture architecture here, you need to have very strong foundation. Lima is a seismic city. So if we have buildings with not like good foundation, deep foundation, these buildings are condemned to be destroyed immediately. Earthquakes like 7 Richter scale, sometimes 8 Richter scale, even we had 9 Richter scale earthquakes had destroyed the city constantly. So, but most of the passages that we can see nowadays are under churches because the churches were not changed. The churches were not, built higher. They were respected in their most original plans, or layouts, okay? So, well, this is just to give you an idea of how different can be as the same section, We're talking about a very old historic part that is surrounded with modern construction as well, so just to give you an idea how a little bit of the zones were investigated inside the Church of St. Anne of the indigenous, that's the main altar of the church, and the section where we had catacombs also was under the main altar and also under the section where, let's say, the feligrecy, the people used to visit because the church is closed now. And this is how catacombs look like without being touched, without being restored. So you can see here a lot of bones spread everywhere. So there is not a particular order in those catacombs. The catacombs in Lima, as well, I assume also catacombs in other parts of the world, back in the colonial times, were places that were not visited by the common people. If they were used as a cemetery, they were just, used to deposit bodies, to pile bodies one over the other, and nobody was welcome to come in to visit the dead like nowadays we do in regular cemeteries. So that's why you don't see any order, any names displayed, because nobody really visited these sites. Okay, so those are just bones and skulls everywhere. So we have to also mention a little bit about, for example, the importance of this site. Remember that this was a cemetery for indigenous. Okay, so but not just a cemetery like where indigenous, or let's say, like brought their relatives to be buried in a Christian way, because indigenous also embraced the Catholic faith quite early, let's say, in the history of the conquest of this territory. Many people turned into Catholics pretty much, by desire, not maybe the totality, but many did. But these people needed to be buried, of course, in a Christian way. So, of course, this was a good place to be buried in if you were a Christian. But also, churches were also hospitals too. Most of the churches that we will be seeing, of course, today, they offer this service of attention to the ill. And also those hospitals were not like the hospitals of these days where, we go to a hospital and we expect that we're going to get soon better and we're going to recover. Actually, people used to consider hospitals places where, of course, you will go to maybe feel better, but also to die in peace with God. Right? So where you're going to be given a good treatment, the one that was possible back then, but you are going to also be able to go fast to heaven because you will be also attended by nurses that were also nuns, right? The same with the priests in there, right? So the expectations of getting better were not really that high. When you were going to a hospital. The amount of people buried in this cemetery is about, let's say, between 1,500 to 1,800. But we are not very sure. We don't have any information of the exact, list of names, nothing. Unfortunately, we have a big blank page in terms of, for example, genealogies in colonial Peru, unlike, other parts of the world in Europe. Which is really, really sad as well. So within also these cemeteries, There were sections for men and sections for women. You can see also from the last investigations to this burial site, which are quite recent. They started before the world pandemic. Well, they were stopped, of course, because of this terrible situation we've been for a couple of years, but I'm sure they are going also to take this back to investigations. So here you can see the way how people were buried in a very modest way, probably with linens only and not coffins. No coffins, nothing like that. So the idea was to keep, let's say, simple things, right? Also, well, the indigenous community was a very modest community, very poor community in general terms. But of course, there were people who were very wealthy. The indigenous who were very wealthy were, of course, not buried in mass graves like the ones you're seeing here, of course. They were buried under the main altar, for example, or under specific altars. To be buried like that, you needed to be a benefactor. Okay, so that was not something everybody could afford. Okay, so there's another case of a hospital. In this case, is the San Andrew Hospital, and there is a legend of a buried Inca. Right, this is how nowadays the hospital looks like. I know it doesn't look like a very attractive place, but trust me, it is a very interesting site, and also one of the creepiest places to be in Lima if at night. No, I was just once able to come inside, like this building, cross those doors, and it's very creepy. And that is because this was also at a time a mental institution. So there is really a lot of, energy attached to this site, to say it in a way, right? So this was the first hospital of Lima, right? So it passed from being a hospital, also mental institution, also the first medical amphitheater also of Peru was located there, because as it was a mental institution, there were many people who were interns of this place who had no families, or their families abandoned them. So when they died, their bodies were dissected, by the doctors, who were, of course, trying to understand how the system, human system, work. So, well, it was a very, very important hospital, the first one of Peru, so that's very important to be mentioned. And it was created just 3 years after the foundation of Lima in 1538, right? So it's a very, very old one. But we have to also mention that this was originally a hospital for Spanish men. So maybe you remember about the St. Anne's Hospital and Church. Well, that was a indigenous, let's say, facility, a facility for indigenous. We also had facilities for Afro-Peruvians too, which were even way more modest, because most of these churches were built by the donations of, people of that community. So the Afro-Peruvian community didn't have really those big donors. So that's why their institutions were much more modest too. Going to the interesting story of the Inca buried here, it is believed that there is still an Inca inside this these catacombs of the St. Andrew Hospital. So how is that possible? Well, there are some legends who said that, and some stories also who said that the Incas, let's say the Inca kings, right, who were, by the way, mummified after they passed away. They were mummified, of course, not like the Egyptian mummies, but they indeed passed through a conservation process, and they were also object of cult, and they were reverenced by the people of Cusco. So when they died, they were continued treated as if they were alive. right? So when the Spanish came, they went to Cusco. They destroyed many of the mummies, the sacred mummies of the Incas, and it is believed that a group of these mummies were Incan king mummies were taken to Lima and were buried here in the hospital of San Andrew, right? There are witnesses, even eyewitnesses, who mention that. So that's why for many years it has been carried a long investigation in the patio of the hospital, in different chapels inside the hospital, by different associations, different groups, all of them formal, legal, of course, trying to find out the mummy of one of our Incas. It would be incredible because we don't have any of those. We don't have any mummies of the royal Incas. It would be fantastic to do even a DNA test on them, if it's possible, to see how they look like. But so far, nothing has happened. No, we were not able to find any of those mummies, but lots of bodies also, over 40 bodies. Hello, Ursula. Lots of these bodies were discovered, but we're talking about like common people, basically, like no high status people. Also, lots of bodies of people who were dissected for this, like a medical amphitheater for the examination of bodies. That became also a trend in the beginnings of the 19th century. So this is another picture also of how the bodies were discovered. And honestly, the bodies were discovered very, very close to the surface. So in this case, we do have passages like catacombs, right? But we also have lots of bodies right in the surface of children, as you can see over here, adults also. So they were just everywhere with no special, context around them, right? So the Congress of Peru also has another group of corridors, and there's not much information about them, but it is believed that the Congress was connected, the building where the Congress was, which was a church, by the way. We used to have a church original where nowadays is the Congress of Peru, used to be connected with the Inquisition building, which is not far away from that location. So we can see also some walls, even painted, as you can see. And this section of the Congress is not open to the general public, to the visitors. It is because it's located under important offices of the Congress. But there was a YouTuber who was able to access to those corridors. That's how I was able to access to this information. The corridors really go inside. The Congress has used many of these underground corridors and hallways as new offices also. Also, they just did a conservation work on those walls, but they couldn't continue excavating them because they went out of the property of the Congress. So there's no possibility for them, that is out of their jurisdiction, so they couldn't continue. But it's believed that these corridors go to the Inquisition building. It's important also to talk about the Inquisition, because, and we will be in a moment seeing some images related with the Inquisition underground. The Inquisition was a very important Spanish institution, important in the sense that they were a controller institution. They control the behavior of the indigenous, and they enforce, of course, the good behavior. According to their codes, they impose them because they use tortures if people didn't accept their ways. We will go in detail about this, but they had dungeons, and those dungeons were underground too. Okay, so it is very interesting to see that these buildings, a church and an Inquisition building, were connected underground. So you can see also these very beautiful frescoes, paintings that recall a bit of the tiles, and even water wells. So that's a well. Because we have underground water in Lima. We are in a desert, but we have access to the phreatic table water, which is not so deep. So some zones used to have wells, right? Now we go to the Inquisition. The Inquisition is one of those very powerful institutions that came to Peru with the conquistadors, but basically after the conquistadors. No, the conquistadors did their work of expansion and domination also, and fighting the rebel Incas for a space of nearly 25 years. Then after the pacification, of course, pacification, we were not really in peace for a long time, came with another way of controlling the individuals here. So the indigenous now were supposed to be Catholic, right? Or they were introduced into the Catholic faith. So what the crown wanted was that the Hispanic Americas will not be contaminated with any religions that were coming from the old world. Because remember that in theory, like, the indigenous people here were not controlled by the Inquisition. They were controlled by other system. There was another system that was called the extirpation of idolatries that worked pretty much like the Inquisition for a time. Also the chasing of the witches style, so the same. They chase huacas, they chase idols, and they burn the idols, and they kill the priests that continue, worshiping their gods. Hola, Charity, thanks for joining. But that was a different system. So the Inquisition didn't control the indigenous directly. So who they control? They control, for example, Protestants who came to Peru, Jews who came to Peru. Remember that the conquest of the New World coincides also, or the discovery of the New World by the Europeans coincides also with the expelling of the Jews from Spain, the reconquering of the territories that were Arab or Muslim in Spain. There was a lot of chaos happening in Europe. So many people escaped to the Americas, saying they were Catholic, but they were not. So when the Inquisition noticed that, they decided to establish 3 Inquisitions. They did it at the end, 3 Inquisitions in the Americas, okay, in the Hispanic Americas. One Inquisition was the Inquisition of Lima, another one was the Inquisition of Mexico, and another one, the Inquisition of Colombia, the one that was in Cartagena, the Indias, okay? The oldest ones are the Mexican one and the Limanian one, which were born at the same time. Established here in the Americas, both in the year 1570. Okay, so, tortures were used for people to confess their sins, their crimes, or maybe that they were hiding someone, or hiding the information about someone who was not, behaving according to the way people believe it they should, like being respectful to Mother Church, and not practicing any other religions. So before we go in detail about the catacombs of the Inquisition, I would like to also tell you that the Inquisition in this moment is closed. We don't have tours inside the Inquisition building. But there is in this moment a process of restoration and investigation there. And I've been informed that ending this year, it will be reopened. Right? So this is the way how people used to go to visit the Inquisition. Like even children, school groups, like children groups. So you can see people coming down. Can you see that? Like they are going down into an underground level where during the tours, we were able to see for example, the original dungeons that existed in this building, right? So some visitors to Lima in the 16th century, 17th century, who were able, because of the job they were doing, because they were, like sort of probably, controllers, of the Inquisition here, and were sending this information to Spain, they were allowed to come inside this Inquisition building, and they saw these catacombs, and they saw also the dungeons, which they said that they were like terrible. That they were people were walled inside those catacombs. They were walled inside these cells, right? There was no light coming inside. So, and of course, what we have here is evidence of that, right? So there were up to 24 cells at some point. These cells that were, like underground, with no access of natural light coming in, right? Also here, this is another picture taken from that circuit that we used to do in the Museum of the Inquisition. Probably it will be very different after the renovations done. But what you see here is a priest or a mannequin representing a priest, could be a friar, seems like to me a Franciscan for the type of color of the clothes. So, but he is in a jail. So why someone like him will be in jail? Well, the reason is because many people in the colonial times were accused of also heresies, or, like having pacts with the devil, because sometimes priests, for example, in their big devotion for, like their faith, they said they had an angel presenting to them, or they hear the voice of Virgin Mary. And because, that was always suspicious, they were observed. And if they were like discovered being guilty somehow of having a conversation with the devil, they will be taken to the Inquisition, right? So even Catholic people were not safe of going to the Inquisition. There is another building that is related with the Inquisition building, of course, because the house of Pilatos, or Casa Esquivel y Jaraba, is known as the place where the first synagogue of Lima was located. And the family who lived here in the 17th century, who was discovered also being crypto-Jews, Jew in secret, they were part of the family were killed by the Inquisition. Okay, so we know that this house used to have also passages underground, but it seems that these passages were connected with not the family, the Jewish family that lived here, probably with a family before the constructors of this house. We know that these passages used to connect to another church, the Church of the Jesuits, one of the richest churches also in Lima. So they were probably passages to escape. The crypts that are located in the convent of the Franciscans. Hola Marilu, thanks for joining. So the crypts that are located in the Church of the Franciscans, by the way, probably the most famous catacombs of maybe Latin America are the ones here in Lima under the convent of the Franciscans. Hola, ¿qué tal, Mendez? Hello. So the convent of the Franciscans is famous because, well, it has a very nice circuit that also allows you to go inside a cemetery that is known as the catacombs or catacombs of St. Francis. So the part that we visit in the catacombs corresponds to the church, like under the church, right? But we have always known that the catacombs even go outside that territory. So during the world pandemic, where people were not allowed to go out of their homes, there was a lot of work of excavation in the historic center of Lima. The consequence of this excavation, especially here in the atrium of the Church of the Franciscans, where also we have the façadas of 3 more buildings. That one you see there is the chapel of Our Madame of the Solitude, Nuestra Señora de la Soledad. Next is located the entrance to the convent of the Franciscans. Then is the Church of the Franciscans, and finally there is another chapel, the Chapel of the Miracle. So there you can see these corridors in this section over here. So little by little, the investigations went deeper and deeper and deeper, and people were able to find that about 1.5 meters below the level of the soil nowadays, frescoes. They were able to find tiles, right? So you are seeing there some tiles also, which in the second picture also I think you see them much more clear. So. But it is in, let's say, a section that is outside the nowadays chapel. So probably the chapel used to be different, even much bigger in the front, and that section coincide also with maybe the entrance of the chapel originally. Now is outside, right? So you can see also more of the passages, the height of them. And that's also a view of, in front of us, the Church of St. Francis of Lima, which it looks pretty much like that, the facade, like the one you see there. And also you can see the projection where probably the facade of this chapel over here, which is the chapel of Our Madame of the Solitude, used to be located. That's why the findings are exactly under that section. Okay, so a little bit of the work, the stone work, also very fine. This must have been probably a crypt or a burial site that belonged to a very important family that donated money to the chapel, right? And we have here evidences of tiles from Spain. Most of the tiles that we have here from that period, we're talking about the beginnings of the 17th century, came from Seville in Spain. So the oldest ones we have, for example, are from the years 1606, 1608, that are in some churches and convents in Lima. And also a view of the Church of the Franciscans, the convent and church. We plan to do a restoration that will make these façadas look like this, recovering the original colors of the façadas. But now, there are some conflicts about the space that is outside the church, conflicts between the Franciscans and the City Hall of Lima. So now that section is closed. We cannot access to that part, to the atrium you're seeing here. It is all fenced in this moment. Well, just rapidly, I would like to share with you also the catacombs of St. Francis. If you haven't been there in person, if you haven't come to Lima with me or any other tour guide, by the way, this part is like, there's no internet access into this section, number one, because the walls are very thick. There's no cell phone signal there. And that is because the catacombs are quite deep. In its deepest point, they are more or less 10 meters below let's say, the city. So you can see, for example, some steps going to the church. Also these mass graves also that are visible during the circuit. The characteristic of the convent of the Franciscans, and in particular the catacombs, is that the catacombs, it's believed they have more than 25,000 remains. There were over 25,000 people buried there. Um, so we can estimate the time used of these catacombs in less than 200 years. And we have wells there, very, very deep, like this one. This is the deepest well, it's 10 meters deep. So we continue seeing Lima underground, no? 10 meters deep well. It was never a water well, by the way. So this is a different type of structure underground. This is a shock absorber of earthquakes. So it's believed that because the Spanish, in their desire of adapting to these new earthquake circumstances they were not used to, they also started to implement technologies to make the architecture resistant to earthquakes. And one of those systems ended up being this style of the very deep holes that will be shock absorbers. But not every expert, not every architect agrees in this. So this could be just a legend, an urban legend. But some people also continue describing these wells as shock absorbers. So you can see that there's no names of people here. People are just everywhere. Like their bodies are here and there, femurs are everywhere. This is another well, by the way. This one is 5 meters deep, so it's half the depth of the other one, and it also contains bones inside. So that's how the passages of the Franciscans catacombs look like. Very thick walls. By the way, Lima underground was built in a material that is named cal y canto. Cal y canto consists in it's a cement-like material that has water, sand, pebbles, and limestone. Okay, so it's a very strong material. We didn't invent that here in Peru. It comes from this from Europe. The Spanish use it, and I'm sure also that's a very, very old type of cement used in Europe. But it worked very good here because we have earthquakes also. Very thick walls, by the way. And this picture also shows us people look into the church. The church is right on top of this cemetery. Okay, so well, this is how it looks like nowadays. So don't forget to visit the catacombs if you are in Lima, Peru. Okay, so rapidly also the case of the Casa Bodega y Cuadra. In the back also we see sections that were underground too. This house limits with the river, Rimac River, and well, this section was not really visible from above the house. So probably these other underground Lima sections were for other purposes, like hiding, for example, goods, or like containers that had wine or oil, right? So it was more like for security purposes. There are also tunnels under the government palace. For example, this is a little extract from a newspaper from the year 1910 when, people were, let's say, discovered that there were passages under the government palace, the Palacio. Well, let's say, long story short, from one day to another, carriages were passing, like in the street next to the government palace, and one of the wheels, got stuck into a hole that rapidly got bigger and bigger, and from which people were able to see also, well, the inside, an inside section that, like you can see here, a little bit of the crowds that were surprised and had no idea what was under this hole, right? But they saw sort of like a corridor, very bad smell also. And well, soon after the hole was closed. But later on, more investigations were done and finally discovered more of these corridors, which are still in investigation process. Well, also, it is important to clarify that it was believed for long that under the Palace of Government used to be located a Incan palace, or even pre-Incan, palace. But unfortunately for us, archaeological evidences are not really conclusive about this. Probably there was no Incan remains in that location. So that's why also the constructions in this section have been investigated with the intention of seeing if there was any Incan remains under those buildings, but it has not been found yet anything. The catacombs also of the cathedral are way less known, and you can see also that still we have a lot of also human remains in churches in Lima. Well, this is another highly visited museum of the historic center. And once again, we don't have any names of people like, you know, where the bodies are. So in conclusion, what we can think or we can deduce is that, well, people didn't care of having their names put over their coffins. The only thing they care about was being buried in a church, in holy ground, with the embrace, let's say, of Mother Church, and the prayers of the priests or the nuns, depending on the case, right? But there is a section inside the corridors in the main altar, under the main altar of the cathedral, where we have a zone we name parvulario, which is the section where children were buried. Okay, so that those are very, very tiny coffins of children, right? And here also we can see a box that contain also a description of the name Diego de Andrade, right? So at least we have the name of one person, but that is not really the common. We have also other crypts too under the cathedral, right? Some of them, of course, are perfectly prepared for visitors. But these corridors, these rooms are very tiny. Most of these crypts were used by benefactors of the church, right? It could be, for example, the group of the shoemakers, for example, no, or the cofrade of the watermen of Lima, the ones that carry water, for example, to the houses. So cofrades, brotherhoods, they worked very good back then in the sense of maybe if you were an individual, a particular, you couldn't afford to be buried under a church. But if you belong to a cofrade, you will always be donating, like every month, a little bit of money for finally being buried under a church, right? A mill, it's not a windmill, it's a water mill that we have also in this moment in process of investigation that is from the first years of the construction of Lima, the early 16th century. So, well, this is the Molino de Aliaga. Aliaga is one of the oldest families, Spanish families in Lima. Jerónimo de Aliaga was one of the most important men of Francisco Pizarro, Conquistador Pizarro, and he was given a very big plot of land, a beautiful house next to the house of Pizarro, so that means a lot also. This physical proximity showed also that, well, this man was very close to the heart of Francisco Pizarro, and also very close to his house, a mill was created. So this is the way how the mill looked like originally. So it's underground, and it was activated by the water of the river. That's why it's located next to the river, right? So I think we can go backwards. Yes, and we see this circular section that it is indicated that is related with the mill, okay? So, and finally, well, this is a picture of the Venetian palace, the Palacio Veneciano. This palace was located very close to the main square of Lima, right next to Rimac River, next to the palace of the government, palace of the president of Peru, palace back then of the viceroys. This Venetian palace also was completely destroyed. And one of the reasons why it was destroyed, that happened, of course, when there were no more heirs that wanted to live here, in this construction. So finally, the house was looted. But the reason is because there was a legend that, the house had a treasure, okay? The house was looted, was destroyed completely, no treasure was found. But something very curious is that what it was discovered was a tunnel that started in this house and went across Rimac River, under Rimac River. Right? So the river that is next to the city. So it was a very, very deep tunnel. And it was used, we don't know if for escaping, also maybe it could be to conduct the owner of the house and the treasure to his treasure that probably was across the river. Also, there are another theories that says that the slaves that of this family were passed under that bridge to go directly to the house. But we will never know for sure, right? Because unfortunately, the passage also was not investigated and not preserved. So yeah. It happens always in Peru. So, I hope really you enjoy this lecture. Sorry for the display of the camera like this. I didn't want it to be like that. But I don't know why my cell phone rejects to be put in horizontal position every time I try to do a live that is previously organized. So I just can put in horizontal when it is like just a last minute live. And I want to always be able to invite you ahead of time. So I'll try to work out something different, but in the meantime, thank you so much. If you want to support, you can become a supporter, maybe with a donation on PayPal if you wish. I have a Patreon. I have stopped charging on Patreon for now, but you can still join. That would be super. And thank you so much to all the people who've been supporting on Patreon, who've been supporting, also doing donations. That really helps a lot. I'm back here, let's say, trying to give you more of Lima. Let me try to find how to flip the camera. Oh, yes, I think. Okay. So this is the way to do it. So, thanks so much for being today here. To my friends who are new to my history YouTube channel, once again, my name is Vanessa Vasquez. I am a professional licensed tour guide here in Lima, Peru. I organize tours in person here in Lima, and also virtual tours when it's possible. So if you want a tour in person, I'm here for you. If you want a tour virtual and private, I'm here for you as well. I will be also doing more events very soon. The next event I have planned to be for next month is about the Arab influence in Lima. So what do you think about that? We're going to learn about the Arab influence in Lima and also in Peru in general, but we're going to emphasize more our tour in Lima. So how much of the Arab influence we have in our culture. Of course, that we're going to analyze how come the Arab influence came to Peru. That's going to be for that next occasion. So I am also seeing some comments over here. Thank you so much, by the way, if you were here from the beginning. I know people were coming in and out, but if you were not able to see it all, I'm going to be posting this video on YouTube in a moment. When it finishes, I will be putting it also for it to be viewed. You can share it if you wish. You can come back. You can see it again. So that would be great. Letter G, hola, hola, amiga. Hello. Thank you so much, Marlene. Hi, Miriam. Hello. Thanks for joining. Well, and if you want me also to do any topic in particular, please feel free to leave the message here in the chat. I will also be leaving the chat as part of the video so people can also see the let's say the comment thread also during this event. Okay, so what is the main religion in Peru, is asking India first always. Well, the most let's say the found most embraced religion in Peru is Catholic. In this moment we might be about 80% in Peru like Catholic, but also there are other religions that are very, very important. Like, for example, the Christian evangelical religion. The evangelical religion is very, very found here also, but Catholic is the number one. So, well, amigos, I hope you had a fun time with me this morning. Maybe it's afternoon for you. So see you very soon. Thanks for being from the beginning, Natalie, Alexander, and take care. Best to you all. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you very soon. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye. Thank you.